That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, I'm going to start with the Line Electric story because I'm trying to do some background work here. The story today is it has been sold off to a group of investors for about $6 million. So if I got my numbers right, that would mean the Quebec government's loss stands right now at about $140 million. Another great job here.
At least. And you know, I only mention it because, and I know to a certain extent, I'm banging my head against the wall. And I don't want to bring the listeners in there on with me, but you know, it's stories like this that have become almost a norm for coverage in Quebec. It's like, well, yeah, you know, it didn't really work, and we lost all kinds of tax. What is the obsession? Not with just this government. Quebec governments in general love to throw public money at private projects on the grounds. Well, it's local, it's Quebec, it's this, it's that. And it just didn't work. And at one point, Line Electric had an evaluation of nearly $5 billion, and now it's being sold for $6 million on the grounds that, well, you know, there's not that big an infrastructure to support after purchase maintenance and so on and so forth. And it's so funny that, you know, we're talking about this, and in a half hour after you were talking to listeners, whether or not they had buyer's remorse for electric vehicles or not. But what's crazy here is you get the impression, and it's becoming more and more dangerously obvious, that, yes, we do need electric vehicles. Yes, there is listen, look out the window. I didn't know Montreal had a monsoon season until today, right? We've got dozens of flights being diverted from Trudeau. No, excuse me, oh yeah, well that happens every summer. No, it doesn't, okay? But all that said, you cannot help but get the feeling, it's not just about the money that got thrown out the window. It was all posturing. I've criticized Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives for slapping together slogans. Guess what? I really get the impression, certainly at the federal level, and as echoed as well in Quebec, but certainly at the federal level, the whole idea about electric vehicles was as deeply thought out, or perhaps less deeply thought out, than Justin Trudeau's decision on what socks he was going to wear that day. There was no backstory. There was no plan. There's no idea that says, well, you know, no, of course, no, that's ridiculous, auto manufacturers. It makes perfect sense to have this deadline for EV vehicles because of A, B, and C. No, it wasn't. It was just like, you know, throwing pixie dust around saying, oh, no, everything's going to be fine. We're going to have electric vehicles and unicorns will prance across the highways and everything's going to be great. There was nothing done, Aaron. Yeah. And we can chuckle, but the fact is we do need electric vehicles, but we need them produced and distributed and organized by people who actually have a clue about what they're doing. Now, the one thing I can say about Mark Carney is even if, you know, and as far as I'm concerned, he's still on probation, but at least he's smart enough to know what he doesn't know how to do.
Right, exactly.
So if he defers to the auto manufacturers and says, listen, okay, fine, let's get some coherence out of this, that's fine as well. But my God, can we, if nothing else, and my God, you look at the money. We've lost so much money over this entire venture that I dare not, you know, even want to guesstimate how much really we are never going to get back for absolutely no reason whatsoever. But the bottom line here is someone's got to take charge of this. It's got to be more than slogans, and it's certainly got to be more than a clever way to divert public funding into what is essentially a private enterprise.
You know, I was thinking as you're talking about this that, you know, Pierre Fitzgibbon got out while the getting was good, I guess, God, right? Yeah. So it's been a while. No one even brings up his name anymore, but he was there when this was going on, right?
Yep. He was in the thick of it.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like, okay, he's gone. He's in the private sector, and I believe he's still involved with the EV industry. But my God, it's just not there. Yeah. It's just, and when we're looking at this, I'm not making this stuff up. And as I said, you know, I'm terrible, and I apply the same rule to media companies as well. We shouldn't be spending public money on stuff that can't support itself. And the thing is, EVs never really had that impression, simply because you need some place to plug the damn thing in, and that still isn't available. Not really. And it's a big country, and it's a cold country, and a lot of people, and despite the fact that a lot of people are saying, yeah, I love my EV, you know, you still got I got the impression anyway, that there was still this this sense of doubt, this perhaps, well, okay, wouldn't necessarily want to drive across the country, say, in February in my trusty EV, simply because I wouldn't know where to plug it in. You get the idea that it is still kind of, as we like to say in these parts, a pilot project. It shouldn't be. We've been at this for nearly a decade now.
Enough.
Come on.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Everyone, either get in or stay the hell out, but whatever we do, from now on, please, enough with the photo ops and the ribbon cuttings and the taking of public money and the piling up on deficits upon deficits. I wouldn't mind going into deficit if it was for something, but when it's for nothing, when it really has not changed anything in any tangible way, we've got a real problem, not just in Quebec, but in Ottawa as well.
Jim, I want to get on to the the ever-changing tariff deadline. So first it's July 21st for Donald Trump, then it may be August 1st for Donald Trump, then of course Canada gets a decision July 9th. So look, at the end of all this, and I know there's a poll out today showing Mark Carney's popularity is still quite high because people like sort of what he said. In terms of what's going to get done here, anything coming July 9th from what you can see? Does he have to have something to present?
I am not going to be tossing and turning, wondering what's going to happen on July 9th. I'm not even sure about August 1st. The picture that seems to be emerging from Washington is that they have got to try and spin this to make it look as if the deafening silence from all the countries that Donald Trump threatened with tariffs was in fact them bending the knee, when in fact that's not the case. And don't forget, there's still a lot of issues, a lot of problems generically with the U.S. economy that are only going to make themselves felt within a few months' time. Indeed, if you look at this one big beautiful bill, a lot of the stuff, the Medicaid cuts, the food supplement cuts, they all go into effect after next year's midterm elections. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that gets spun and whether or not they'll be able to keep, stringing this together and stringing the public along until after Election Day. But I have a sneaking suspicion that between now, say, maybe even Labor Day, we're going to be hearing a lot less about tariffs and a lot more about, domestic policy. They simply, the America that Donald Trump is pretending to try to create doesn't exist, won't exist, and barely existed in the past. So this idea of Americans sitting down and putting little screws into iPhones, well, that may appeal to his base, but the fact is it ain't going to happen. And sooner or later, even Americans wearing red baseball caps, are going to feel the crunch. And it's going to be very interesting to see which way opinion is going to go on whether or not the great republic to the south is headed in the right direction.
Look, the latest, it's hard, and I know we talked about this over and over. It's hard from day to day to follow what is going on with respect to U.S. tariff policy. The latest was Vietnam's now going to pay 10%, but then Donald Trump said, look, if you're trying to divert, like which some countries are, by working around China, you'll get taxed just for trying to do that. So it's impossible to keep up. I don't know where we end up in this, Jim, but it would seem to me at some point, as far as Canada is concerned, there needs to be resolution at some point. Right?
There has to be. And I think that when the pressure does come and the breaking point does come, it's not going to come from Mark Carney. It's going to come from American interests, American governors, red state governors, Trump supporters, people who are seeing their personal profits being jeopardized by Donald Trump's completely farfelu idea of, returning America to its non-existent, its mythical, industrial path. And in fact, if the factories did leave America, it was because of people like Donald Trump who want to make more money by paying laborers less. So they shipped all the jobs in the factories overseas. Yeah. Now he's pretending to try and make that up. I don't see how that's going to work. I don't see how the people around him, the billionaires who basically run the U.S. presidency, will sit still for that.
We shall all see. James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Adama.